Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. It was due to power outage. So we're back now. We can continue with our class. So I was describing installation of SPSS. I said we can download it from the site. You can also get it from third-party software website. I get into pc.com, or you can also get it, the installation CD from those third-party vendor, and you can follow these steps to get it installed. Having said that, let's move on to the interface and the overview of SPSS after it's installed. When you first open the SPSS, it presents you with these two views, the data view and the variable view. So when you click on the data view is very much similar to the Excel application, which have just been taken by my previous presenter, wherein you have rows and columns of data. Although they look similar, but they're not the same thing. But if you can comfortably use Excel very well, you can actually use the data view too. The data view is where you enter, you create data from the scratch. You like, for example, what we're seeing here, we're seeing the name, the age, the course, and we can fill in each of these rows are called cases in SPSS. The rows are called cases. Then under the variable view, that is where you now define how each field will be, the data type, the width, the features of each of the field that you see in the data view. You create it in the variable view. You also, in the variable view, that's where you specify the width, the decimal, the kind of data that you want to have there, whether it is ordinal, whether it is nominal, variable, or whether it is scale. We are going to go into details of this one as the course progress as well. So we also have the output viewer. When you run analysis of data, it generates an output for us. So these outputs are viewed or are seen in the output viewer. So when you check the output viewer, you see the table, the graph, the plots, and the analysis of the data they are reported in SPSS through the output viewer. Now let's look at how do we now get data into our SPSS environment. I've already talked about the data view, which you can use to create data from scratch, where you can have the variable the variable being created, and the various data types that goes into the variable. You can do that. But also, you can also import from existing file. You can import from CSV. You can import from Excel. You can even import from Microsoft Access databases or SQL databases. Likewise, you can export data in each of these formats. To import data from Excel, you can just go to the file section, you click on open, then you go to the data. When you click on data, it now presents you with the dialog box, which allows you to locate where the file is stored, and then you click on open. The data will be imported into SPSS environment. Other things that we can do with our data, you can sort the data, you can transform it, you can recode it, you can sort it in alphabetical order, you can sort it in ascending or descending order. You can transform the data by converting the text or categories into number, and you can also recode it by changing the default label into another label that are more descriptive. You can do that one after the data has been inputted. So to open the data file, by default, Data SPSS data are saved with .sav. They are saved with .sav. You can click on the file menu, click on open, then you click on data. That will give you the dialog box that allows you to locate the data file. That is if you want to continue with the data analysis that has already been created using SPSS. We also said that data can be exported using the export feature of the SPSS to be used in other applications like Excel or other application softwares. Data entry and setting up a variable field. Before we can enter data, before we can create the data points in the data view editor, the first thing we'll do is to define it in the variable field, which I have already shown here, which I have already shown here earlier. This is the data view. This is the data view which I've already shown earlier. So before we can use anything in the data view, we first have to create it in the variable view. So, and there are a number of rules that we must observe when we are creating the fields that will be used in the data view. One of it is that a variable name must all not have spaces. Most of us here are programmers. We know how the rules of creating variables. They must be short, they must be descriptive, and they cannot be greater than 64 characters. A typical example of what we can use as our variable name is the CPU temp, which means the CPU temperature. We also have the numeric data type, which you can use for taking measurements such as numbers or integers. We have the string data type, which you can use for creating IDs or categories or name and so on and so forth. We also have label. Label are descriptive name. When you create a variable under the data view, if you just move your mouse over it and leave it there for a while, it will be and you move your mouse over there, the label will be shown there. And the measure of variables, we have ordinal, we have nominal, we have scale, we have various types of, we are going to talk about that in the subsequent slide as well. Measure of variables, we have scale. Scale are usually used for continuous variable or variables that are having decimal point like 2.35. You can choose that one when you are creating your variable. We use nominal for string variables like car model, categories, days of the week, number of students, age, and so on and so forth. We can use the nominal variable for that. The ordinal variable type, we use that one for data sets that are having a ranking or priority. For example, days of the week, Monday should come before Tuesday, Tuesday should come before Wednesday. So we can use ordinal for that, or maybe salary scale, grade level 1 should be before grade level. The higher the number, the higher the relevance of there's priority relationship between those data points. We use ordinal for that. Interval, we can use interval for data that are having the differences between data values. So this is just hands-on that you can practice on creating, like we said, a variable name. We can use test ID. These are valid variable name, runtime, error rate. And when we create this, we can then go to save the file as .sav, which I have mentioned earlier on. The SPSS save its own file as .sav. Then we can import the file as CSV. CSV means comma separated file. Instead of that, we can use a text editor to create our file. Sensor ID, comma, temperature, comma, humidity. Then we put 3 different values separated by comma. When we have those, we can save it as file name.csv. Then we go inside our SPSS. We can import that. That's just to show us that a feature, one of the features of SPSS, because most sensor data or field data, they normally come in .csv. We can use SPSS to analyze that, and to do that, we use import data, which I have earlier described, to import the CSV file into our SPSS environment. So this is just an illustration of how to import data into SPSS. From the file menu, we go to import, we click on different, these are different data sources that we can use in our SPSS. So this is just a review, a recap of what you have been talking about so far. What's SPSS? You can put in your responses to these questions on the chat box. I will check it, and if you have one or two questions, you can also put it as the course progresses. Let's now go to the analysis of data. We have already described how we can get data into our SPSS environment. Now, how do we now analyze the data? This is a typical example of instructions that we can give to us in the practical or in to create our data sets in SPSS. Let's say we're having an hypothetical laptop performance test that we want to analyze. We can have it in this way, and when we have created that in our SPSS, this is what it looks like. In the data view, we have the laptop identity number as the label, the name, the three variables that we have created. We have the laptop ID, we have the OS type, we have the boot time, and battery life. Laptop ID, we all know that it's a string like your Dell or HP, or we can put it as string. The width, the number of characters that we want to allow in that ID, we put it as 20. And like you can see a typical example of it, I have HP Inspiron 24010 as a typical example of that in the data view editor. We can, laptop ID is not expected to have decimal points. We put it as 0. The laptop identity number, that is the label, the descriptive name that we can, it's not going to show in the data view, but when you put your mouse over that label ID, it will bring the laptop identity number. And because it's a string type, that's why we are having it as nominal. Then when we are dealing with boot up time, it is a numeric variable that's that could have decimal points. And as in this case, we have 2 decimal points there, and that's why we are putting scale as a measure. So the battery life is also a scale type as a measure of the variables that we have there. So this is just an illustration to show the data view. When your data is imported in an SPSS, you could click on file, you go to open, click on the data. We have demonstrated this one earlier on, and you locate the file through the browse dialog box. And this is exactly how it will look like in SPSS environment. Now, to run analysis of our data, we can do descriptive analysis. We can we need to understand the data. We need to look at the data count. We might want to know what is the frequency of the data points, what are the percentiles, so these are some of the things that we can look at when the data has gotten into our SPS environment. So to first carry out descriptive analysis, we can click on analyze. When you click on analyze, go to the descriptive menu, then you click on the frequencies. So when you now click on frequency, it will bring us a dialog box. You can click on the hard fields. Here we have a number of lists of variables that we have in that data point, but the ones that we are particular about, or the one that we want to analyze, or the one that we want to know the frequency of, you click on it, and then this arrow will point to this direction to move it into this under the variable list. So then you can click on OK. When you click on OK, the output viewer, the SPSS will run the analysis of the data, look for the age and income, and calculate the frequency of the data points that we have there, and then generate an output viewer, which we are going to see shortly. So this is an example of output viewer. As you can see, if there are missing values there, we'll see it there. If there are the number of males that are in the data set, we have 3,179. It is very fast and it's very convenient. And then the number of females that we have there, we can have it by running the frequency analysis of the data set. Other things that we can do under the descriptive statistics, we can also do, we can calculate the mean, the median, the mode. We can use calculate measure of dispersion. We can calculate measures of central tendencies. These are very important because they allow us to understand the capture, how our data has captured what we intend to capture. For example, the mean will show us the average of the data sets. The median will tell us, oh, these are the central values around which our data points are. Then we can also have measure of dispersion like the standard deviation, which shows us how far away the data points are from the average. And we can also look at what is the maximum value point of maximum value of our data point, as well as the minimum value of our data point. To do this, click on Analyze under the menu bar. Then you go to Descriptive Statistics. When you click on the Descriptive Statistics, it will bring us the dialog box as we have said in the previous slide. Then you can then add the field of interest. In this case, we are adding age and income, as we have seen here. You can then click on the options. When you click on options, it will allow us to see various options that we can select there. It will allow us to select the minimum, the maximum, the standard deviation, the range. Then you can click on OK to move on to see the output of the analysis that we have done. And this is exactly what we are going to see from descriptive statistics. You can see the minimum value, the maximum value, and the standard deviation, as well as the variance. So we can equally create visualization for our data. Visualization gives us a one-stop understanding of what our data looks like. We can see histogram, we can create histogram, we can create bar chart, we can create normal distribution. To do this, we go to the Analyze tab as well under the menu. We click on Descriptive Statistics and go to Frequency. Or we can also select we can select the charts and then select the particular one, either it is histogram or it is a bar chart from the options menu that we have. So when we do that, these are snapshots of what we see through the various data visualization options that we have selected. Like we said, we can create the normal distribution, we can create a pie chart, we can create a histogram. And each of these outputs, we can export them into our reports. We can also right-click and copy each of them and then paste it directly into our report, either as a PNG or as a JPEG, or we can export it as a PowerPoint and then present it as a report. SPSS is very good in data analysis, and they are very fast in reporting as well. So let's now look at the last aspect of our SPSS course for today. How do we handle missing data? Because one thing that is very common is that when surveys are carried out, we normally have missing data, either because people does not know how to respond to the questions there, or they just feel like they don't want to answer that particular question. But when we collect the form from the survey, we discover that there are some area, or there are some data points that are missing. So how do we now handle this? This one can affect the analysis of our data. To do this, we go to the variable view. That is where we design what goes into our data points. But before I continue, let me quickly call out the attendance code for today, so that those people that the last code for today, please pay attention. It will be coming out very soon. The third attendance code for today, N F E R R. I take it again. N as in network, F as in football, E as in education, R as in reporting, and R as a record again. So finally, the third attendance code for today, N F E R R. Thanks.
You can submit immediately.
You can submit the attendance immediately now. So while I run off today's presentation. So to handle missing data, click on the variable field. You are going to see missing under the variable field. Then you click on the missing cell. Then when you click that, it's going to bring us a dialog box. It's going to bring us a dialog box. The dialog box, you then select discrete missing values. Inside the discrete missing values, you have 3 boxes there. You can put NR in the first box, which means no response. Then leave the other 2 spaces. When you do this, you now go under the value box. You add that one to the value. The list of values that you have under that particular field that is missing, you had NR there. So when you do that, click on OK. You now go back to the data view. As you are trying to enter the data view, the areas that are missing, once you double click it, you will see NR, which will be taken as the value that represents the missing value. However, if they are not string, you can equally use a particular number, like the one we have here. We can use 999 to replace the areas that are missing. So when your SPSS is handling the analysis, it will use this one as default value for the missing data. However, this is where we shall be drawing the curtain for today's presentation on SPSS. If you have 1 or 2 questions, you can send us through the live chat. We'll respond to it appropriately. I have been able to cover what SPSS is, which is Statistical Package for Social Sciences. I've been able to cover how we can handle missing data. We have been able to cover how we can get data into our SPSS environment by either by creating the data from the data view from the scratch, or we can import the data through text file. We can import it as .csv, or we can also import the data as through the database, like for example, Microsoft Access database. We have described how SPSS look like with the interface, the data view, the SPSS variable view. We have equally looked at how we can configure each of these data points, the different data types that can go into SPSS, and as well, we have looked at how charts and data visualizations can be handled in SPSS. SPSS is very interesting, and it's a very versatile data analysis tool that can be used for various applications. And in our case, as engineering and science students, the SPSS can be used for cleaning our data, and they can be used for our research analysis. Thank you very much for for attending today's class. I'll meet you some other time. Bye for now. Bye.
You're welcome. Congratulations.